everybody? Welcome to Shared Screens Media Club for The Last of Us, not a Marvel show, even though this is the squad we have right now. Chance is out of town, so I am taking over hosting for The Last of Us this week because long-haired daddies stick together. Le'Aaron, point out he cut his hair. I'll cut you, okay? Today, we are talking about The Last of Us episode 3. Joining me today is Le'Aaron Jass and Brett Jamerson from Shared Screens. How's everyone doing tonight?
So, do I just send my therapy bill to Neil Druckmann or like Naughty Dog or like HBO? Like who gets the bill? Greg Miller gets part of it for the fucking McDonald's clown, but like I need to know where to send the other half.
The other half,
Sony.
yeah, just to Sony directly.
Sony.
They're based in California now, right? San Mateo.
Yeah.
Or something like
Just
that.
send it directly to Jim Ryan,
Mhm.
and then ask
Yeah.
him to update you on his cat's birthday party. Alrighty, so today
yeah,
we are
really
talking
quick.
about The
Sorry.
Last of Us episode 3. We are doing this. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, they used my birth date, like the birthday I will be celebrating this summer, in this episode, and I didn't enjoy it. I would love it if it
Good.
could have been any other date.
Just even a day later or sooner.
Happy early birthday.
Yeah, like months in
For
advance.
everyone watching, do want to let you know that we are doing these every Sunday night after The Last of Us with an upload bright and early Monday morning. So once you're done watching the show, you can put your noggin asleep, wake up, and turn on Shared Screens and listen to us cry for an hour and a half. Alrighty, so Brett, let's start with you. Just give us a general insight on your thoughts for this episode, and then also just remind the audience what your experience is with The Last of Us and the games, and if you've played them, what do you know? All that good stuff.
Yeah. So experience with just like the franchise. I didn't play the game until 2020. I played the PS4 version of the game, so I didn't play the remake. Although I played it later. Yeah, I even playing the game, 7 years after hit me like a brick with all the story beats. And then I played part 2 a year later. Yeah, so I played each game only one time through. Um, but obviously, I mean, the way these games tell their story, it sticks with you. So I know the story beats very well. But yeah, this episode was, I think, some of the most emotional television I've watched in a long time. We'll get into it later, I'm sure, and we'll try to avoid spoilers for the show and for the game as much as possible. But all I'll say is what they did in this episode was very, poignant and just well executed.
Yeah. Oh, I will reiterate the spoiler policy right here. I was going to do it after Leon, but it's always a good time to put it as soon. We will be talking full spoilers for this episode, as well as full spoilers up to this point in the game for a majority of the show. After we get through this episode, we will make it very clear that we are transitioning into full Last of Us spoilers. That means spoilers all the way up to the end of part 2. We'll make that very clear. So if you don't want to get spoiled for what the future of the show might hold, you can click away and all that good stuff. But Le'Aaron, what did you think of tonight's episode? It sounds like it really affected you considering you're asking about your therapy bill.
So I think the best way to introduce people to this episode and my knowledge of The Last of Us is by what I texted Jordan, which was the moment that dear Frank fell in the hole. I texted Jordan and I went, I wish Bill and Frank were gay together. Like, I know they aren't, but I want them to be a little happy gay couple. And then about 10 minutes later, in all caps, texted you, wait, are they gay for each other? Wait, they are gay. I love them. Which immediately
Yeah.
turns into me being incredibly sad because.
We saw the episode.
Yeah. However, I will say, complete deviation from the game, and I'm kind of impressed.
Complete. So I think that could be the first thing we hit on, just because this episode has a lot to talk about. Let's talk about the differences between this chapter and the game. because this one isn't even like, oh, they changed like one major point, but the whole episode is kind of, this is the most deviation we've gotten so far in the game. You arrive in Billstown, which isn't even this very nice gated community. It does just seem like Bill was living in an average suburban home, and when everybody left, he went, now they're all mine. Like there wasn't even like a, where Bill's town starts and ends, if you take a, if you take away the fences, just looks like a row of houses type of thing. Um, and you in the game you experience Joel and Ellie navigating all of Bill's multiple layers of booby traps and going from one section of the town to the other until you inevitably reach Bill's house itself. We did not get the upside down shooting scene. That is
Mm,
like a big thing at this point in the game, where Joel thinks he's walking into a garage, gets stuck in a little trap, is hanging upside down, has to shoot upside down while the clickers are coming at him. And then they meet Bill in a little bunker. You can tell from the very beginning, and they pointed out when you see the traps leading into the town, Ellie asks if he's paranoid. Joel says that's understating it. You see Bill, he is very neurotic and stressed. He very casually mentions that he had a partner named Frank. The game does use this word partner a little ambiguously at this point. Um, you chase some stuff down. Joel and Ellie get ahead of Bill. They go into a house. They see a body in a Hawaiian t-shirt just hanging from a roof, very, very decomposed. And you look at a note that is from Frank to Bill. You could tell that they ended on not good terms, because Frank has a lot of anger when he's writing that letter. But the letter does make it a little bit more clear that it was not just a business ship, a business partnership. It was a romantic endeavor. Bill also has a
Why
lot
are
of.
you talking like you're covering for the president?
I don't know.
Romantic endeavor? You sound like you're doing PR for somebody who got caught with a
I
prostitute.
don't know. I'm
Like,
just
what are you
because I'm
doing?
also trying to remind myself of like everything else that's happening in this level right now. So
Just,
excuse me.
I'm so sorry, but like, pull up. I need someone out there to cut that together with the videos of George Stephanopoulos talking to the press after the Monica Lewinsky news broke, because the energy is very similar.
Okay, yeah. You find out that they were together. Bill stumbles upon the body. He also gets very angry. So there's a lot more rage in the game than there is in the show.
mhm.
But obviously in the show we got none of that. In fact, we the biggest change I think is that Bill himself is dead when we reach him in this episode. Um, and so we really just see more. We get almost what I think people were hoping a spin-off series would be between seasons 1 and 2, of kind of like a Last of Us Factions idea of getting these anthology stories of just different towns or different peoples and what they go through during the outbreak. And that's what this episode was. And this episode, I know all the viewers who saw it said that this is the one that like broke them. They thought that it was the best. Maybe this is a sort of way for them to test how they want to present a spin-off Factions show.
Okay, here's the thing too. I don't Can we just give credit where credit is due to this writing team that they wrote one of the best queer love stories that exists in modern media?
They did. They
Like,
did a
and
very good
they
job.
just did that, like, with no it's it's like, all right, cool, awesome, guys.
No,
Great job.
they did a fantastic job, and we will get into all that. But Brett, do you have anything else to say about the differences between this episode and that level in the game?
Yeah, yeah. I not to like disagree with you, but I think a lot of this episode isn't really any quote unquote like deviation from the game because a lot of it's like before the events of the game.
Yeah, yeah.
But that breaking point is a significant deviation. Um, but
You're right
yeah,
when yeah, you're right that the deviation in terms of what Joel and Ellie go through is not as significant. It's more the deviation as to what we the audience saw.
right. And yeah, I just kind of what I've said. I think the last 2 weeks is I just love although yeah, like Leon's totally right. Like this is a brutal world, but I love spending just more time with these characters, especially Frank, who we don't get to see at all. Like you said, Jordan.
We
Like
never see him in the game other than his body.
yeah, you get like a few notes from him. Yeah, in that that segment of the game. But yeah, fleshing out his character Bill as well, and then them together as like with the relationship. Um, I thought was super beautiful because it did not feel um I don't know what the right like way to say it. It didn't feel far fetched. Like based on what you know, if you play the game, all of this translates because you know Bill is like a curmudgeon. He's a little psychotic,
They
stubborn, and
made
Frank.
such strong characters for the game, even with, like, just what they introduced, that they were able to, like, because Bill is who he is in the game, and he was already such a strong character that they could add in this, like, other part of Frank and just flesh things out.
Yeah,
Hmm.
Like,
and they gave us a more complete version of Bill. Like in the game, Ellie goes, "Is he paranoid?" And Joel goes, "That's putting it mildly." And he's a little bit neurotic, and he's always making sure that his traps around the town are good. Here we get this backstory of like Bill has always been like that. Bill's just always been that one dude down the road that's like, "Oh, I'm ready for when they come and fucking get us. I'm not fucking dying." Like, dude's he's the one guy that's been preparing for the end and like worked out for his best. If you're one of those people, don't necessarily think this is going to happen, but but yeah, they follow like a logical line of how got to be to what we see in the game, which is kind of just that he's always been like that, even in like a safer world.
Hmm.
Um, he's got the "don't tread on me" or the join or die flags. He's
which
got
is
he
why I didn't think he was gay. Like, I don't know, I just felt like they were building Bill up to be something, like, different, and because I didn't know in the game that they were supposed to be romantic, because 'cause I've never played it, I've only ever done like, I've watched people play it. Um, like, I just expected him to be what I was gonna come on here and make jokes about how, like, yeah, this is true. All those people that have those kind of flags are probably gonna be doing fucking fantastic in the apocalypse.
yeah, we're gonna look at them like they're crazy until shit hits the fan, and then we're like, maybe we should have.
Yeah, like, it's just like, fine.
Yeah. Um, but so we do see a little bit more before that. So let's start at the beginning of the episode. First episode that does not open with a flashback in '03 about the origins of the virus and how we got to where it was. We kind of just pick up with Joel and Ellie walking from where we left them last episode after the Capitol building in Boston got blown up. For the FBI agent listening, I'm talking about a TV show. I'm sorry. Uh, so we don't get a flashback this time. We do get a little bit more explanation of just kind of what we saw the last two episodes, where Joel is saying, yeah, the world kind of fell apart in one day because whenever this outbreak happened, it entered the food supply. All the really core foods that you find anywhere around the world got infected, spread around. On a Thursday, people got sick by Friday, and then by Monday, everything was gone. It does kind of remind me about how people talk about like March 13th, 2020 was the day a lot of schools were like, hey, go home for 2 weeks.
Yeah, yeah. That I think because even with the game, it always was like, okay, how did everything fall apart all in one day or so fast? Um, Especially with the show version of how the infection can get spread beyond just biting, but like with the tendrils and everything like that, like that feels less effective than like air spores, you
Yeah,
know?
and it sounds like even just eating them makes you
Yeah, that's what he's
sick.
saying is that, like, it's the problem with this is, like, a very real thing with, like, science is, like, the problem is that if, a fungus like that or, like, the fungus that can act like LSD that they think caused the Salem witch trials, those, like, fungi, when they get into things like flour, we're fucked as an entire like species because every single culture uses flour. It's like flour, rice, and sugar are the three like most dangerous things for like a fungus or something like that to get into because like it truly would just be you went home, you know, you were coming home from work on Thursday, you stopped at the grocery store where they had just restocked all of your basic rice, bread, cereal, like oatmeals, like all that stuff. And then you go home and you're using some of it to make dinner. And then you get up in the morning and you're using some of it to make breakfast. It's in some of what you pack for your lunch at work and your kids' lunch at work. Like, and you just end up fucked. And then you lose the first 3 ones, um, the first few ones that get sick just from eating it, and they go off and start fucking biting people.
Yeah.
Like, and where they established last episode that the people who worked in the factories that processed all this stuff were exposed, which is another reason that we'd be screwed if it got into flowers, because the factories that a lot of food is developed in, for better or worse, are not the greatest like like working conditions. Like, they're stuffy, they're hot, like things can easily, you're breathing all that in, like it's bad.
Yeah, it's terrifying to think about, especially because the game presents it in like a, oh, you guys, Joel and his family just happen to be in the city where the epicenter of this outbreak is. And then it jumps 20 years later. And so you go, oh, in 20 years, this is what happened. For this version of Joel, just to straight up be like, no, by Monday, everything was gone.
It,
Like
they set it up
Well,
so well with all the fucking near misses that Joel, Tommy, and
Sarah.
Sarah have.
Yeah, like I
where
remember
you
reading
said the
that.
pancake line, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they didn't have.
And they didn't eat the biscuits. He forgot to pick up a cake, and they were out of pancake mix.
Yeah, it's just like they missed flowers so much that day, and for what?
For once, being a forgetful dad saves the day. Well, not for Sarah, but for Joel.
Any forgetful dads out there, just remember, every once in a while might come in handy. Now call your kids and pay your fucking child support.
Oh my
So,
god. I said forgetful, not absentee.
thin line.
Good god.
So Joel gives that explanation, and then we go into like a little just general store that has been ransacked long ago, but Joel hid stuff in years ago, which good on him for being like, listen, I'll start at this corner and eventually I'll find my shit.
It's like
Ellie
watching
goes,
a squirrel.
yes.
Like, it was just like
But instead
watching
of
a
but in,
man, but he is a squirrel
but
just
instead of nuts, it
stomping.
was bullets.
Yeah, and he's just stomping, looking for like the one spot that he's like, ah,
And
here
what
it is.
happens is sometimes they forget where they buried those bullets, and a gun grows in its place, and that's how we get weapons.
Good
um,
God.
Meanwhile, Ellie goes into the back, finds a box of tampons, which was a very weird product placement from Tampax, but good
No,
for
it's
them. Get
not.
your bag. No, I'm
It's not a
kidding. I'm
weird
kidding.
product placement. Why it's funny, why I loved this is it is a huge joke with zombie content.
Yeah,
That
I've
like,
seen that.
what do women do when they're on their periods? And no one ever addresses it. And so this line too that Ellie has of like, been picked apart already, my ass. Like, I was like, yeah, fuck yeah, that's funny. Like,
Oh,
yes.
see, no. To me, it wasn't the fact that like she's like, oh fuck, where am I going to find tampons in this world? Like, I'm not going to say I get that,
No,
but
it
that makes sense.
absolutely is. Let
It
me tell you,
it's the fact that
I
it
know
was a
there are a lot of,
legit Tampax box.
well, that's just because like that's the easiest thing to get. Like,
Yeah.
that everybody recognizes Tampax is like Kleenex. It's so synonymous with tampon that like if they got you by Kotex, nobody would really know what that box was, but you know what a Tampax tampon box looks like.
Plus, it matches with the theme they've had of using 80s music, because Tampax also uses the hit me with your best shot.
Also, yeah, Tampax might be one of the only tampon brands available like that would have been available.
Yeah, it becomes one of those things where it's,
Because a
when you're
lot of
20
those,
years into an apocalypse, you're not going to worry about free trade, cruelty free,
yeah,
feminine hygiene products.
like, I'm thinking about it now, I don't even know if Kotex existed pre-2003.
I,
Like, so Tampax may have been, because like, Tampax has, like, been around for years and, like, it was a monopoly for a while.
I can't respond. I didn't even know what a period was in 2003.
I mean, to be fair, neither did I was only 7.
Yeah, like, um, but so she finds the box, finds the little trap door, jumps in, um, and Ellie starts doing the zombie apocalypse version of like killing birds in your backyard, which is like just fucking with disinfected under the concrete.
That was like a harrowing scene. Just a visual of that uh infected trap, like, because it's been done before in like other zombie and apocalyptic TV shows and movies, but it was super effective here. Just like um, when you go back to like when Ellie was like, do you feel bad killing them because like the humans
Knowing
They
are
what
were
they used to
still
people
be.
ones.
the
Yeah.
people are still like kind of technically in there, and just seeing that dude just stuck there, and then um yeah, we can elaborate like with how Ellie responds to that because
Yeah, this one was weird because it's like they've never shown any infected have that level of humanity still in them, and that's because we've never gotten that level of a close up on them before in either of
But
the
is
episodes
it a
so
level
far.
of humanity, or are you assigning that?
I think we're assigning it. I absolutely think we're
Like,
assigning it. I,
also
it
oh
is, but it was one thing where it's like if she just went up and stabbed it to be safe, would be like Ellie knows Ellie's surviving because she doesn't take any chances. It was the weird torture that made me
but
go,
it's
Ellie.
not, but it's she knows that they're not human, and you have to think about it as she's a 14-year-old girl that is the only person seemingly on the planet who has ever been bitten by one of these things and lived. There's going to be a really sick curiosity there.
Oh no, I'm not actually shaming Ellie for this. I need to make that clear.
Like, yeah, because, like, it's a totally understandable and not something where I'd be like, "Oh, it's like fucking with birds when you're little." Like, no, she has this, like, that would be like if you were a child and you found out that, like, you were naturally immune to snake venom. You would fuck with snakes because there's, like, a weird curiosity as to, like, "Why am I immune to snake venom?" Jordan would probably actively go, like, stick his hand in a copperhead
Oh, I'd be the
hole.
dude at the I'd be like a dude at the circus. I'd be like, "Step right up and watch the man who can survive the snakes."
Watch me just stick my hand in a box of poisonous. Jordan just goes on fear. Doesn't tell anyone. Just goes on fear factor to be like, look what I can do.
but
I
as
was
soon
gonna
as
say America's Got Talent, but yours makes more sense.
as soon as she went like down there, I was like, if you play the video game, anytime you're playing Last of Us and you like go down into dark,
Anytime you take a detour to look for supplies, you get fucked over.
yeah, you go down somewhere, you go into a dark place, like you're like, okay, where are the clickers? Like where are you guys at? Come out. And of course it was like there was one down there. And he took his time though. He didn't immediately start,
Well,
clicking.
he couldn't move to begin with, so
Yeah, but he could have made his little predator noise,
yeah.
his little purr.
But yeah, we like I'm no like this is what the second time that they've really like like not a complete change because but like just in terms of where we know her character goes in totality, but like they're making Ellie more of like a ruthless character early on.
I think they are sowing the seeds for what she. Well, sorry, I
Yeah.
don't want to say anything. No future spoilers right now. I think they are sowing the seeds for a future version of Ellie. Um, and that is the most I'm going to say about that. Again, we're not going to spoil anything that happens past this point in the games. We can talk about that later in the episode. But they're sowing seeds for stuff about Ellie for sure. And yeah, I'm not actually thinking that she's crazy. This is a fucked up world. If she just wants to slit that dude's eyebrow and see what happens, I get it. Especially like Aaron said, her being immune, she's going to like, because I'm sure in the back of Ellie's head, she's thinking, "Oh, I'm just gonna turn at any moment."
Yeah, that like either she's gonna turn at any moment or like there's something in her that's wrong. And that's like, even if it's an immunity thing where she's still alive, people not understanding why your body is doing something is not something that like children handle well. um Fully understandably, adults, you look to the adults in those situations to like know what's happening, and when the adults don't know what's happening, that's deeply unsettling. But I don't
And
know.
as Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker will tell you, if something happens to your body at 17 and there's no adult to turn to and you still don't figure it out by the time you're 40, you just go, it's like breathing. It's a deep cut reference right there. Um, but yeah, so then we get out of the general. What?
I have no idea what that is. Continue.
I'll explain later. When we get out of the general store, we start walking, and Joel's like, "Hey, let's cut through that field because I don't want you to see something." And Ellie's like, "Well, now I want to see it, motherfucker." And don't tempt people because if the Bible's taught us one thing.
Good
But
lord.
yeah, Ellie takes a few steps and it just gets sad. Like she was hoping to see something cool, but it's just sad. It was just skeletons of people that Joel explains they were killed because there wasn't room.
I will say thank you to HBO Max for not forcing me to watch that mother and her child be shot. I really
Yeah,
thought that's
yeah.
where the episode was going when we went into our they faked me out and I was like, I was typing out a message on Discord being like, I can't watch this tonight, so I can't be on the podcast because I really I was not looking to watch that. But
Yeah, a mom and her newborn baby.
infant child. Infant
Like
child.
it wasn't even like it was a kid. It wasn't even like they made it a toddler. It was a baby.
Yeah.
And yeah, like that was I think dark enough, and HBO knows we shouldn't have shown that. Although I wouldn't be surprised knowing like the writers of The Last of Us, they're like,
They
we have a
showed
deleted
some
scene.
I was concerned I was going to see Nick Offerman's penis at one point because they do that. I've seen Jason
The
Momoa's
the Dong Swanson.
ew. Never call
You
it
only
that.
you only can show you only can show private parts if somebody's wearing like body medieval armor. They got like a
Yeah.
big two-handed sword.
Or they have
Other
like
than that,
leaves on their nipples. Yeah,
yeah. Otherwise, it's a
it's
no
too
go.
modern. We found out privates were bad sometime around the 16th century.
Good
But
lord.
yeah,
Yeah,
so oh, go ahead,
uh,
Brett.
yeah. Just the visual medium of showing like uh the initial transportation to QZs and stuff like that. Uh, Again, just because this is a show, it's much more visceral. Because I think in part one, and I think they touch on this in part two. Like they do touch on it a little bit in like maybe a brief dialogue line or two, or maybe a note or two of like the reality of what happened with a lot of the QZs, where because they're so limited on space and resources that they did have to turn people away. Now, I don't know if it was as again visceral as hey, we got to round these people up and kill them versus people coming to the gates and being like, hey, we just can't let you in. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, the games show us more QZs that went to shit than they do QZs that are operating as intended. Because I think the only one of that we see is Boston, and calling that one operated as intended is being generous.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
But
it's pretty nice, but yeah.
yeah, but yeah, no, this was, and then Ellie just being like, but they weren't even infected. Why kill them? And Joel just being like, the dead don't get infected. It's like, sure, we could leave these people to live, and if there's room later, take them in. But how do I know that in 2 weeks we just won't have 20 more infected to deal with?
Hmm.
And so we found out that like, yeah, they went real totalitarian real fast. And again, it does sometimes just watching it in this day and age feel like there was like a COVID conspiracy person like in the writers' room. But yeah,
Yeah.
so that transitions us into the first time we see Bill, where he is in his basement with all his 2003 era CCTVs, just surveying all these people leaving, and says, "Not today, New World Order." Laren, you have
Jackoffs.
something
New
to
World
say?
Order jackoffs. Um,
Yes. How could I forget the
New
jackoffs?
World this is it's great though. And here getting into Bill and that Bill we just watch him fully turn the town into his refuge. Puts up fences, we've got flamethrowers, we've got fucking electric fences. Also, this show is so goddamn funny. And it has no business being as funny as it is. Because when they were in the Home Depot and he's
Oh,
getting all these
there's this like
supplies and
little
the power goes
montage.
out and he's like, yeah, and the power goes out and he's like, well, that was sooner than expected. So then he just goes and rams through the gate at the gas and turns everything back on. Just the man is so together. And what's wild is everything he was doing is how you could live it in theory forever after the fall of society. Is you basically turn your own home into a farm, um, and, like, run things off gas and all that crap. But it
A
only ever works when you're
self-sufficient
the only
community.
person in town.
Yeah. Like, we see he has chickens, he must have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He grows his little carrots, among other things. He's got all of his fucking little booby traps that are hidden incredibly well, which
Yeah,
when Frank
he starts
fell
building.
this is the other thing is Frank sorry?
Oh, go ahead, you're on a little bit of a delay, so just go ahead.
Good. Frank falls in a hole, and when he's like fucking, "Do you have" Nick Offerman is like, "Do you have any weapons?" And he pauses for like 30 seconds, then says no, and Nick Offerman just yelling back, "Why did it take you so long to say that?" Is not like this is not a situation where this should be funny, but it's so funny.
It's funny to watch as the audience because it's also like I get Frank being like, part of me wanted to say yeah to scare you away, but then you might have just shot me right away. But if I said no, you also could have just shot me right away because you're like, oh look, free kill.
It's like one of those things where it's like, I'm in a hole, so no matter what my answer is, I'm at a slight disadvantage because I am in a hole.
I am in a hole. So yeah, Nick or not Nick Offerman, fucking Bill builds his little Team Rocket ass traps, just like an episode of Pokemon. They fall through, they're in a hole. He helps him up. He checks him to see if he's infected. Frank goes, "Where'd you get that?" And Bill does not answer. Um, and then Frank is just like, "Hey, can I get some food, please?" And so basically, we see the start of their relationship. Bill decides to take a chance on this man, give him a shower and a meal, and we see the start of a beautiful blossoming relationship. Guys, any comments at this point?
I love them. I
Um,
love my 2
yeah, I
dads.
thought initially I was like, why is this so like
Brokeback Mountain.
like it was awkward in the sense of um like I was like how are they going to portray this relationship, because like you could not execute it well very easily, especially since it's deviating from like the game a little bit, um in terms of like a lot of this is new material, even though it could totally fit in, but for the game.
Hmm.
um but when they're in bed together and Frank's like, is this your first time? And Bill's like, yeah. It's like, oh, okay, that's why he's like a little like out of place a little bit, because
They
he's
do
just
a
like,
yeah, yeah. They do a good job at just showing Bill's overall paranoia with like
mm-hmm.
because there's also like parts where like when Frank is first in his house and Bill's on edge and you're like, are you on edge because like oh you're feeling something here, like you
Is
got a
this
little
gay panic, or
crush,
are
or are
you
you?
afraid he's gonna kill you?
Yeah,
Probably both. Probably both, right?
Both gay panic and fear of murder.
both, yeah. And who hasn't been experiencing both at the same time? I mean, come on.
Have you ever heard of the term fear boner?
True.
I've said.
Get those at the wrong time, you become a very different person. But yeah, so we find out Bill's a virgin. That also explains a lot about him.
Well,
Um,
he had sex with the
with a
one
woman
girl,
once.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, but then we slowly start to see the evolution of this relationship throughout the years. And Frank comes to Bill one day saying that he wants to make the town nicer, and Bill's like, "No point. I've done the math on the resources. There's no point." I also did like Frank being like, "I want to fix up the boutique and the furniture store." It's like, okay, are you going to be selling furniture? I'm confused here.
That part of this flashback, because they jumped like what, 2 3 different times.
Yeah, they
That
jumped
Yeah.
multiple times.
that part of the
They had
flashback
been together at 7
made me,
years at that point.
yeah, it made me think of like the game, because again, I don't think, if I recall correctly, it's not very clear why they split. Um,
Bill just
If
says some generic stuff about like they couldn't handle each other anymore, which like this was very wholesome in general in life. People need space. Also, you need to know more than one other person. So I can see how just Bill and Frank being together in a house for 7 years drove them a little bit crazy.
this that scene made me think of like the game of like, oh, this probably happened right before the events of like the game's
Yeah, in
story,
the game,
and
I feel like this is where the deviation starts.
yeah, it's just something like Frank wanted to do something that was, deemed non-essential by Bill. And, I mean, just like with any kind of relationship, romantic or platonic or whatever, like sometimes little things can just be like the breaking point,
And
or
set
it can
you
be
off.
or it can be a series of little things that, yeah, so it's like that could have been the first time, or probably knowing Bill like the 18th time, and yeah, it just sets him off like in the game. But yeah, Heroes was very beautiful because again, I guess it is a little bit of a deviation. It did allow Frank or Bill to like kind of soften a little
Yeah, and I think we got Learen's favorite line of the show, so I'll let Learen comment on that.
bit.
Oh, I had so many. Um, ooh,
I'm talking about
I
when
loved the
they're
garden
arguing.
party line. Yeah, there were so many in that argument that were great. So I loved when he walks out and Frank is like, um, I know you're somebody who thinks that 9/11 was an inside job and that the government is full of Nazis. And Bill's just like, the government is Nazis. Yeah, now is the funniest fight I've ever heard in my life. And then as there, because the way
His
Nick
little
Offerman is standing
stance.
like it's so funny. He's got a thigh holster, like, it's just great. And then, Frank is like, "Yeah, I'm gonna fix up the store and the furniture. I'm gonna fix up the liquor store and the furniture store, and then I'm gonna fix up the boutique." And he's like, "Are we having garden parties? Like, why?" Like, it's just such a
And then,
great like, their interactions were so good.
yeah, and then it cuts to them having a fucking garden party. Which is what
Yeah.
made that so much better, is that they literally bring Joel and Tess out to the garden to have this like such a like
Oh, that's the thing I
modern
was also
little
dying at.
get together.
I was dying at, "I've been talking to a very nice woman on the radio." "You what?" As they go running into the house, like, it's just so good.
Yeah, it was very, very funny. Then we see a little bit. We don't necessarily see the how they meet, but we see their first meeting with Joel and Tess having a garden party, just eating on the front lawn. They all look so clean. Like there's a moment where I think all four of them are going, "This is not the apocalypse." Well, maybe three of them. Bill's always thinking it's the apocalypse, even when it's not. But the other three of them is like, "We're not in the apocalypse right now. This feels lovely. This feels back to normal." And we see the beginning of that relationship as to how he met the smugglers, and he's saying, "No, we're self sufficient. We don't need anything." Joel is pointing out, "Hey, your fence is going to go. I have access to stuff in the QZ. You have access to stuff here. Like, we don't have to be best buddies, but let's have a bartering relationship here."
Yeah.
Brett, do you want to comment on that at all, given that you've played the games and you know a little bit about Joel and Tessa's relationship with Bill?
Yeah, yeah, I don't have anything like um anything to expound on except just again showing, because the game, just because of it being a video game, like with Bill's Town, right? Like you talked about at the very beginning of this episode, like, Joel and Ellie run through like 40 traps to finally get to Bill. It's like, of course, it's a video game. You can't just walk up, or, right to his, you know,
Yeah, nothing's ever
doorstep.
easy.
Yeah. And so it was nice to see them again. You can't tell, you have to show, not tell in a television show. So them showing this relationship between Joel and Tess, with Bill and Frank too, because that is even less touched upon a little bit with in the game.
Well, the game makes it sound like they never really knew Frank.
Right, that's what I was saying. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, so yeah, and we'll get into it with next week's episode, and just I think further into the season of like just the nature of um, like raiders and things like that. Because yeah, Joel's like, yeah, you're lucky. Like Tess was answering Frank's like radio
compared to the
calls,
other
and
people. Yeah.
yeah,
And he says something similar at the beginning of the episode when like he has his gun at the ready and Ellie's like, "Oh, is there infected out here?" And Joel goes, "No, I'm worried about people." Like arguably that's the scarier thing cuz like the infected you know what you're getting when they're infected. You know, people can trick you in and be like, "Oh no, we're good. Like come in for food," and then just fucking shoot you or you're the food.
That's the
hmm
entire plot of The Walking Dead. It's like, "Hey, yeah, zombies are bad, but look at fucking humans, right?"
Yeah, and then like you end up in a situation where like you don't even know who's the good or the bad person just cuz like everybody's so ready to like kill on sight that it 100% makes sense why you see the people who are like, "Hey, put your gun down. I'm in charge. I'm going to be the one in charge here, or I'm shooting you," because you probably tried to not be that person before and gotten fucked over for it.
Um, Also, I think I highly recommend everybody listen to the Recap podcast hosted by Troy Baker with Neil Druckmann because it's phenomenal. But in it,
Hmm.
Neil Druckmann talks about how the way he pitched the game initially to Sony and then to HBO is with the in his story bible the show's tagline was this is a love story and it's not a good thing. And like, whoa, they've been hitting that home with the show. Like it
Yeah,
because like watching Bill and Frank's relationship develop the way it does and seeing what Joel and Tess are and that Joel just calls her mine in an attempt to not be connected, but he is connected, like you know that them letting these people in and like falling in love with these people only ends in pain. And they're still doing and it's so human and so painful to watch. Like and then also like fucking I'm sorry I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but then he gets fucking Parkinson's? Are you kidding me? You're telling me this gay man Frank lived through the beginning
thought he
of
had
the AIDS
cancer.
epidemic.
I
I assumed from the shaking and that he couldn't hold a paintbrush correctly that it was either ALS or Parkinson's.
yeah. I didn't know what it. At first, I thought maybe it was supposed to be
I thought
Alzheimer's at like the very beginning, but then like he was talking and was very clearly like he was there.
He was
Um,
there, it was
I
not
thought it
Alzheimer's.
I thought it was
yeah,
cancer because of the MRI comment.
Oh, see, Parkinson's is also found with an MRI, and neither of them have cures. I don't know why I didn't
and then
think
yeah, he made the point
cancer.
to say that. Yeah, I feel like they left it ambiguous on purpose.
Yeah,
Either way, that
I don't
fucking
like well,
sucks,
if
dude.
you have Parkinson.
It does suck. And yeah, I mean, so we could go a little bit to like the post episode interviews and stuff where like not even post well, we could go back to 2020 real quick when like in the launch of The Last of Us 2, Neil Druckmann's talking, he goes, the first game is about what love does to a person in the good way, like what love can drive you to do. And the second game is very much about the bad things that love can drive you to do. And he hits on that again in the post-show interview here where this all of The Last of Us is about love and what it can drive people to do. But this story of Bill and Frank, at least the version in the show, is like the one time they show what good love can do in the most pure form, because we see the hints of that when like he surprises Bill with the strawberry bushes and Bill eats a strawberry for probably the first time in a decade and a half and does his little Ron Swanson riddles giggle.
hmm
Okay, did anybody else hear that when they were reading the letter though? And she went he, and I just heard Ron Swanson's little
So when he laughed after eating the strawberry, I heard the same giggle when he goes, "I love riddles." When Ellie's reading the he, I'm hearing when the doctor is feeling up Ron Swanson's stomach and he's just like trying to hold it in and bursts out laughing.
yeah. Oh
um,
my god.
yeah. Speaking of that, let's. I think this is kind of going back because it's like before Frank even goes in, but your show note on like Nick Offerman has like a clause in any contract he signs where he has to eat steak.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like just every role Nick Offerman is in, he's like, I want one scene where I'm sitting in a table and I get alcohol and just a nice fresh piece of steak. I don't even care what animal.
Mm.
Um, sorry, I thought I had something to say, but I was getting something mixed up with something else. My bad. But yeah, just because
Ray
like
just
that
watched
scene where like
Jordan
he's
go on a journey.
Okay, no,
Jordan
okay, let's
just
go.
traveled years. Like,
We're kind of jumping around here, but let's talk
yeah.
about Arby's.
Let's talk about Arby's. Okay, yeah, that was also weird
Where do
product
you
placement.
where do you weigh in on Arby's, Jordan?
I'm a nay. I'm a nay on Arby's.
we didn't really
Leanne, where
have
do you
them.
weigh in on Arby's?
We didn't really have them where like Jordan and I grew up.
We had one across where my dad's store was, and it was there when my dad bought the store. And I remember he took my family out to eat there once to be like, "Hey, if you guys ever visit me, we can come see Arby's." Like we were like 11 at the time. He couldn't fucking show us the alcohol. He was, selling to
Yeah.
people. So he was like, "Let's go to Arby's," and none of us really liked it. And then it became a Nathan's, and now it's a Dunkin' Donuts. I've just
Yeah, I
and
don't think I've
I
ever had
till
Arby's. 'Cause I don't think they have
It's
them here
okay.
either.
It's definitely like a Midwest,
It's the
East Coast
same thing
thing.
I say about people in
Yeah.
New York who wanna go to Subway, where I'm like, "Just go to a real deli." Like,
I
I've
think
just
that's
never
the
felt
thing
the
is,
need
like
to go to
yeah.
Arby's.
It's like if I'm gonna get, like, a
Um,
sandwich with, like, that kind of meat on it, it's gonna be I'm just gonna go to a deli.
because so quick rundown of my history with Arby's. So basically, um, like me and my friends would just like rip on each other for liking Arby's. Like that was just like the weird like joke that we had in like our friend group. Because one time my friend like picked me up from the airport when I was visiting him back in my hometown, and he's like, "You want to go to Arby's?" And I was like, "What?" Like, so, um,
Why?
but the Jamocha shakes are good. I
Jon
will say
S
that.
Jon
I will,
Stewart, like, declared war on Arby's when he had The Daily
Why?
Show.
did he really?
Why?
Dang.
Yes, that and Chicago pizza. The Chicago pizza one got personal at points with, like, local news in Chicago being like, "Jon Stewart?"
Also, do you know who RDC World is, Jordan?
I do not.
It's that like one YouTube like comedy group. Um, he,
RDC World?
yeah, he has like a Arby's skit where like he's like delivering. He's like a delivery guy for Arby's, and like he's trying to deliver the food, and like the guy just does not want it, and he's like, "Oh no, wrong place." And the dude's like, "You gotta take this. This is Arby's." He's like, "I don't want it." Um, Arby's is not great, but the Jamocha shakes are good. That's like the one saving grace.
Gotcha. I've just never been to Arby's other than the one time as a kid where none of us liked it.
Yeah, yeah. I only would go to it in college because I went to school in Southeast Ohio, so it's like in the middle of nowhere. And if you're leaving town, it,
What foods you eat in college is like what foods you eat on vacation. You're in desperate times, call for desperate measures. It doesn't matter. It's
Yeah, like,
okay.
you
yeah,
have no money and no real access to anything, so, like, yeah, I get it when you're in college.
My first semester in law school, Taco Bell brought back the beefy crunch burrito, and for $2, you got one with a drink. And when I tell you, I lived off of those.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, you got to do what you got
Um,
to do.
the end of this episode was sad
But
as
yes,
fuck.
so, I mean, let's scale back a little bit. We do get the scene where I thought things were going to deviate, and I think that we all thought was also taking place when we saw the little preview of Bill yelling "Cole Joel." Like we thought that was all what the music was leading up to in the first episode. Turns out, just at one point a few years ago, they had gotten attacked. Fantastic booby trap just to have these saws that cut open gas and then a flame right there.
this was it happens all the time in movies, so I'm not just harping on it for this show specifically. But this, again, he's not like a Navy SEAL or whatever. He probably doesn't have like any real combat experience or training. He probably has some
He's
manuals.
he's a survivalist. Like he's just a dude that does this for fun because he's worried shit's gonna hit the fan.
Right. But like
Which, to be fair,
you're defending.
Okay, yeah. Again, to be fair, like I said earlier, he was the one dude with the "Don't tread on me" flag that were like this dude did good.
Because again, the difference between the show and the game is like Billstown in the game feels like a suburb of like a major city, right? Like it feels like an actual like town. Like whereas Billstown in the show here, it feels like a little like cul-de-sac kind of vibe, right?
It had more like a gated community vibe. Like,
Right. Yeah, like a neighborhood. A
I
neighborhood,
think
I
it's
a
supposed to
little
be
bit,
one of
right?
those,
Like,
like, teeny New England towns where, like,
I
everything
was
is
gonna
an
like come up
old
with
house.
like, yeah, I was
yeah,
gonna
but
come
like
up with like an answer of like a
Bill's town in the show is like Leonard saying, it's like just a classic New England town with like these little shops and old buildings, but like it still feels so gated. Where like Bill's town in the game feels like Malcolm in the Middle, just middle class America. Like the real libertarian's the one in the game. This guy's bougie as fuck.
but you're standing out in the middle of the open defending your town, not in the second floor of your house,
Yeah.
sniping
You
them.
have the perfect sniper nest. Why the fuck are you down on the road? Like,
Yeah,
Also,
were you
like he was
afraid to
shooting
wake
towards
your
them.
Yeah.
and
But what I mean is like he was literally shooting at the people. It's like, dude, there's gas just leaking. Fucking shoot at the pipes.
Well, no, because
because
then if you
I
shoot at the pipes, you can cause a fire through the entire pipes, and then this booby trap can never work again. To maintain it, he needed to,
Yeah.
like, shoot them, but he should have gone upstairs.
Or any of the other buildings he definitely has access to if he didn't want to wake up Frank.
Yeah.
because at this point I knew the show was going to deviate a little bit from the game, and so I was like, is Frank just going to get like his head blown open here or something like that? Like, you know what I mean? Because like Bill's like, no, I got this, don't, and then he's like, no, I'm coming to help anyways, and then like he would get shot or something like that. But yeah, no, that was
Yeah, I
like,
thought it was gonna be that. At first, when I saw that this is where changes were happening, I thought it was either gonna be that Bill died and they were gonna meet Frank when they
yeah,
got to his town.
yeah.
Um, but no, we as we jumped ahead before, Bill survives getting shot. We jump another 10 years back to 2023. They're now both very old. Also, shout out to the makeup department for this episode because everybody looked very distinctive in each flashback. Shout out to that. Um,
Bill seemed older in the show than in the game, right? Like I know
yeah,
he's
Yeah.
not like he's not super young, but
He's
in
like
the game, like
alcoholic
he felt like,
Santa in the show.
yeah, in the game he felt like mid 40s, something like that, and then in
yeah.
the
Well,
show it was
in
like
in the show, like that's a
50s.
man who's getting a discount at Denny's and Perkins.
Aw, Perkins, R.I.P. Talk about a
They're
regional
turning,
chain.
they're
What?
turning the one in Wappingers into another Jersey Mike's.
Yeah, I saw when I was home for
Dang.
Christmas. Like, R.I.P. to Perkins. I don't know if
We got
Perkins
it.
exists anymore now.
I don't know. We got one Jersey Mike's 4 years ago, and then we now have two more.
Here's the thing, Jersey Mike's is good, Jimmy John's is way better. I don't live near a Jimmy John's anymore, and that's mildly sad.
It's upsetting to you.
Mm.
Mhm.
So yeah, we jump to their old. Frank has some sort of just horrible disease, and Bill wakes up one morning, and Frank just tells him, "It's my last day. Just accept it, and let's make the best of this." And they clean up. They wear little tuxes. They throw themselves a wedding ceremony, and Bill hands Frank this glass of just he put in a whole bag of painkillers and other crushed stuff, but Frank catches on real quick and goes, "You put stuff in the bottle, didn't you?" And he goes, "Yeah." And he wants to die with his partner, and it's this super sad yet like Frank said, it is objectively romantic that Bill just went, "I don't want to have to live a day without you, and so I'm gonna go with you," and like that he felt at peace doing that. And
Okay,
he
I'm
said
not
to
saying that
Frank that
it's not romantic. I'm not saying that it's not romantic. However, this is not normal times. He's living in the fucking apocalypse. When you die, he will surely just be alone until he is too old. He either dies of old age or is too old to fight off raiders or clickers and dies a horrible death. Yeah, he's gonna kill himself with you. Because, like, literally, when Frank is in the wheelchair and he's like, "Today is my last day," I was like, "Okay, so it's both your last days, because there's absolutely no fucking way Bill is not gonna also off himself, because what would be the point of not? Like, in this truly, in this
Yeah.
No, I
situation,
agree
like."
because it's like he has nowhere to go. It's not like they have kids to take care of. Like, y it's not even
It was very
you were his
romantic.
life.
It was very romantic. It made sense. The only thing that I didn't initially think I was gonna do it until in the moment in that dinner scene was we know in the game Bill meets Joel and Ellie in Bill's town, like when Joel and Ellie come to pass through. So that's why I didn't think that was gonna happen.
Mhm.
Um, we do miss like the fun little like interactions with Bill and Ellie, and then like with like the nudie mag and stuff like that on
We
the
miss out on a couple good
we could
moments
still get
between
it.
them.
We could still get it. Like
I thought we
we
were okay.
yeah,
Yes. So,
we could
Leon,
still get it. Yeah.
Ellie snatches a nudie mag from Bill's place and just starts, or, no, or does she find it in the back of the car? I forget.
I can't remember. I don't know if it's like a side collectible
Because I
or
remember she snatch. Is it that she snatches one of the comics, but then she finds the nudie mag?
it might be. Yeah.
Anyway, basically, she finds a gay nudie mag and is just reading it in the car the way you'd read a newspaper, and makes Joel uncomfortable by turning the page around and going, "What's that white stuff?" And Joel's like, she goes, "I'm kidding. I go to school." And it's just like, I feel for Joel in that moment where it's like, I don't know you, kid. I don't want to talk about sex.
Um. But yeah, again, like just this is such a great adaptation of the source material because a poor adaptation could easily. I brought up earlier, when they get to Bill, in the game, there's like 40 booby traps, right? And then just because like uh, his traps kind of fall apart, and Joel and Ellie triggered a lot of them. Some of the infected come and attack Bill, Joel, and Ellie, and they have to like start the car. They have to like drive through the town while they're getting
It's
attacked left and
this
right.
this point in the game, and again, we're just going to do spoilers up till this point in the game. This is also where we get our first exposure slash introduction to a bloater, which we haven't seen yet in the show. Everybody thought that would be this episode because we did see that one
Like in the
trailer of
gym.
the bloater. Yeah, we get it in the gym with Bill, and we did see that one teaser of a bloater just coming out looking all menacing. A
Mhm.
lot of people thought that would be this episode. Nope, this episode really, other than the one clicker we see Ellie torture for a little minute, we don't see any infected. This was just like a human story in this inhuman world.
Yeah, and I brought this up in a previous episode. Yeah, like if you have Joel and Ellie and well, not Bill, but like killing 50 zombies in this episode, it would get just so like rote, like it would just be so like like desensitized to like you know what it actually would probably feel like
Hmm.
to actually fight like those things.
Yeah.
So it makes
And,
sense.
and I think we're getting a lot of action next week, as we saw
Hmm.
from that preview. But, we then catch up to modern times. Joel and Ellie get into the town. Uh, Joel goes around the house looking for him. Ellie finds the note. Bill leaves him a car, and Joel is kind of stuck by reading the part of the letter that says to keep Tess safe. He does not want to talk about that, and it tells Ellie very clearly, we're just not going to talk about that because Joel's a master at holding his feelings somewhere until someday he'll die. That's a John Mulaney quote. And we get a in universe explanation for his little costume change, and we get him in that green flannel that we spend a really good chunk of the game with him in.
Ellie too.
Ellie
Like
too. Ellie
Yeah,
gets
Ellie's
her
in red
little
shirt.
classic red shirt. Ellie gets
wh-
the classic red shirt. She's never been in a car before, which I that's like something that is weird to think about. Like, what would you do if you were in a car for the first time?
seatbelt. Whoa.
Yeah, he says seatbelt, and Ellie goes, "What language was that?" Like, just does not understand.
Also, because I think it's later on in the game, and we won't like talk about the game stuff, but when she finds like Frank's gun in that desk and she kind of stashes it,
Hmm.
um, I believe, or does she shoot
Well, let's
when
not. We can talk about that in a little bit. Which
no 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 when he gets hung up by the chain in Billstown
I
with
forget.
Ellie?
I forget at what point in the game they finally give Ellie a gun. I'll be honest.
I know this is different for sure though. Like
Well,
like she doesn't like just sneak a gun from
I forget.
because Joel makes a conscious choice to give Ellie a weapon and then later on to teach her how to use it. Like so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, do we have anything to say about the end of the episode about where we're heading with Joel and Ellie, or do we want to get into future spoilers?
Uh, like what we think next episode is going to be like. Is
Next
that what you're?
episode, stuff that you're talking about with the gun that I have a few things to say about, but I don't want to
Yeah,
spoil anything.
yeah.
But
I've talked about it a little bit, but one of the coolest things about this show, or about this world, is like it's like okay, yeah, the clickers are obviously a major threat. They've literally ended most of civilized society, but you know, some of the bigger threats in this world and in this story are humans. So next episode is going to be a very human
yeah,
conflict episode,
and
and
we,
I'm
we did
excited to
see
see.
that little preview. Leanne, anything to say at the to wrap up this episode of the show before we get into future spoilers?
No, cuz like I feel dumb trying to predict anything cuz honestly, besides the big beats, they may decide to do like nothing we expect.
Yeah, yeah. I think the game is yeah, just they're definitely going to hit the big beats pretty one for one, and then the smaller beats is today's episode, like the stuff that we see that's different was really just we all end up at the same place. We just got there differently.
Hmm.
And like we know that Wyoming is coming and there's a completely new for the game storyline in Wyoming or new for the show storyline in Wyoming. It's
Hmm.
going to
Which
be
I'm excited to
interesting.
see.
I'm excited.
Yeah. So this is going to transition us into our full future spoilers segment of the podcast. So if you have not played through The Last of Us or The Last of Us Part 2, I'm going to recommend you click off because now we are everything that has ever been published about The Last of Us is on the table to talk about. I'm going to use this transition also to remind everybody that we are shared screens. We are a group of people that just like to make podcasts together, talk about our favorite content, our favorite games, our favorite movies, our favorite TV shows like this. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Share this on Twitter. Follow us on Twitter at shared_screens, and all our personal Twitters are in the description down below. All right, guys. So, Brett, I'm going to pick up with what you were talking about with future spoilers. I think in the game, we find out that Ellie snuck a gun or somehow got her hands on a gun in the Pittsburgh level when we come across her and she's committed her first kill. And there's like that
Mm,
whole moment of Joel being like slowly approaching her and getting the gun out of her hand and
right.
him realizing that that was her first time ever having to kill a person and how that's going to fuck up a teenager.
Hmm.
But they never say explicitly where she got that gun. So maybe it is that she snuck it from Bill and Frank's house. In the game, it's kind of implied that like she got it from the person that she ended up killing. But that's the one thing that I'm pretty sure I remember. And then next week we are getting Pittsburgh. We're getting the thing with Joel saying he's been on both sides of it. They crash into the departments or into the general store and just have to murk all these people in Pittsburgh because that place became a fucking war zone real fast.
Leave it up to Pittsburgh, man. Makes sense, right? Makes sense.
I don't know. I honestly would have thought it was Philly.
Bro,
Hmm?
that's probably even worse, man. Uh, oh, I wanted to go back to at the end of the episode, like before they drive away, where they like literally lift dialogue from the game. And I think you touched on it, but it was like almost, it was like word for word about like, yeah, like, you don't ask questions about me, I won't ask questions. Yeah, it was like, and such great delivery by Pedro and Bella. So That was awesome because I was
Yeah,
like, oh yeah.
that was a great if it's not one to one as we've seen with like the Tess death scene, it's like 99% to 100. Like they get really close with the way they adapt the lines for these major points. Yeah, that's something that I think they say in the game where he's like, we're gonna keep our past to ourselves. You're gonna do what I say. And the one I know is ripped where he's like, you don't tell people about your condition.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. Glad we got Anna Torv again for probably the
We
last
got her
time.
for one more little scene. Yeah, I really don't know when we'll see her again.
Again, they're making their relationship even more pronounced.
Well, we actually like this. So what's funny is this post episode interview is
They
the
talk about
first
it. Yeah.
official confirmation that Joel and Tess are romantically together. Because Neil says he couldn't save his daughter, and now he couldn't save his romantic partner. The game leaves Joel and Tess's relationship more ambiguous than even. I won't even say they leave Frank and Bill's ambiguous in the game. They just don't outright say the phrase "we are in a relationship."
Right.
Joel and Tess is so like up to interpretation, and even in the show, it kind of was. Other than the fact that like they cuddled up together. So
Right.
for Neil just to officially confirm that, like, yeah, Joel and Tess are romantic. Like we all knew, but like we didn't know.
Hmm.
Leon, what are you thinking for what you do know about the story in the game as to what could happen coming
Oh, I
up?
know nothing anymore.
Oh, this is where
We've
everything you
hit the
know
point
falls.
where I don't we've hit the point in the game where I know I have seen the game past this point, but until we get to Tommy, I have no memory of what happens.
Yeah, to be fair, up till this point to Tommy in the game is a lot more. I'm not even gonna say it's filler, but it's you don't get major beats between Pittsburgh and Tommy really.
Like, I don't remember what happens in Pittsburgh. I don't remember anything after they leave Bill to
Oh, I mean, the most major thing
Tommy.
I think we get between
Well, so I think next week at the end of the episode we'll meet Sam and Henry,
that I agree with. Yes, I did forget about Sam and Henry for a second.
and then
Which I'm really excited for.
the next episode after next week, the Super Bowl episode, will be them going through the events with Sam and Henry before they get to Salt Lake, right?
Yeah, because for a second
Or
I
Wyoming.
thought that Winter happens before Tommy, but no, Winter happens after Tommy.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, so because I'm looking at the game chapters right now. After Billstown is the Pittsburgh level, which is we know we're getting that next week because that starts with the car crashing into that abandoned store and all the shit that goes on there. That one I expect to be changed a decent amount considering they did the hotel stuff, but they only did the hotel lobby, so maybe we do get the full hotel that's not underwater. And then after that we get the suburbs, which is the thing with
Well,
Sam and Henry.
yeah, because that's when the hotel and Joel falls, and then that's where he fights another bloater, right? So we could get it there,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah, maybe that little scene of the bloater is something that is happening in the hotel, and maybe it like to add tension, it's happening kind of in the middle of a fight with just this other group. So now they have to, because that is a thing in the game too, where like you sometimes are fighting clickers and people at the same time. And
Hmm.
part two gave us like the beautiful game mechanic of hey, if you hide, sometimes they'll just kill each other.
Yep, yep.
What are you doing?
And yeah, I do think that Sam and Henry's episode is going to be after five, or is going to be episode five. That one, I also saw something on Twitter this week saying that Neil Druckmann says his favorite Easter egg is in episode five, and that's probably going to have to do with the Ishmael story that you get through the notes and the environmental storytelling. That it's going to be hard for them to do in the show.
Mm, maybe a
So
flashback.
I don't know. I hope. I honestly would not hate if it's a flashback, but I don't know how they would frame that in the sense of like,
That whole like underground like town, sewer town,
yeah,
neighborhood. Yeah, family, whatever. Like, yeah, that was always so fascinating because like it did look like for a while that they had
they
like
had like a little society of sewer people
they
down
had
there.
they had like a school
Mole
like so.
people.
Basically, no, like Leonard, legitimately. So there's a section of the game in this chapter where you meet two people, Sam and Henry, who we're definitely meeting. Like those actors have been confirmed,
Mhm.
and they go through like they start at like a lighthouse that then leads into sewers, and yeah, they have there's notes that these of this person who's leaving the notes, or the notes are addressed to him, named Ish, which is short for Ishmael. And
Mhm.
yeah, he has people with him. They have a group that has kids, and they have like little bunk beds and toys and like a daycare and a school for these kids, and they become like just a sewer society.
You know what? I mean, you must evolve. What on earth are
I
you
just
doing?
I just can't imagine how pale the kids who grew up in the sewers must have been.
That's an unfortunate side effect. Also, fungus grows really easy in the sewers, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend moving into a sewer system, but like whatever. Just like
It
I
kept
don't
them
know.
away from the
I feel like
clickers.
I don't know. I just feel like cuz like we see him be like, "Oh, it's dry as a bone. It's safe." Nothing's dry as the bone as a bone in a sewer.
No. Yeah, no. Now that you mention that, I don't know what their logic is. But yeah, they had a little sewer society that looked like it was going well for a minute until, as always in this world, things turned to shit. But that's not something we might be getting till episode 5. Next episode, I mean, we know it's Pittsburgh. Brett, I'm with you. I think we get the bloater next episode. And something else we do need to mention is this week we officially got the confirmation that there is going to be a Last of Us season 2. We've talked about that the past couple episodes, that we do think that we all kind of knew without them saying there'd be season 2, but I think the question now is like how what parts of part 2 is season 2 going to cover, because nobody really expects them to cover that whole game in one season.
No, and Neil
Yeah,
Druckmann
that's
has
gonna
said
be
before.
interesting.
Sorry. Neil Druckmann has said before
Oh, go
that
ahead.
like he wants to um like cover the in between time, like in between game 1 and game 2, and like cover part of that year where the year between Joel and Ellie, the year between the end of the first game and when Ellie finds out what happened at the end of the first game, before they go
Which
off and are not talking.
we get snippets of that in part 2 that are like flashbacks scattered throughout the game. But I
Yeah,
do
he's
think
talked
that if
about
they
how he
want to,
wants to do it a little more chronologically.
yeah, which I also get, like, I understand that Bella Ramsey is 19, which is Ellie's actual age in part 2, but she still has like that baby face, so I wouldn't be surprised if they want to just fill in that gap with the chronological stuff before they actually give us the straight up story of part 2. And
Mhm.
then of course it's everybody trying to figure out who they are going to cast as Abby, which is
She's gonna have a thick
a big
skin.
question.
She's gonna need to have a thick
Yeah,
skin.
I
not something I envy
I
for
I
that person,
have
because I know everybody who's played the games on Twitter this week was like, I'm not ready for a second round of this fucking discourse, man.
I think maybe I'm just, not naively optimistic, but I think the audience for HBO is much more mature and understanding of nuanced themes and storytelling, you know?
I
Like,
Yeah.
I also think that part of now, because like the internet and gamers on the internet always suck and are just and always have something horrible to say, but that game coming out in 2020 after we were all cooped up for a few months, I think just made people extra fucking visceral on the internet.
yeah, no one was
And
going
then
outside, so
nobody
you're
was
allowed to say
it,
whatever
it
you want.
truly it was just touch grass, like we that sentence came out afterwards, as well as
My
just like a lot of that. I was
my
just
only
gonna say a
reason that I
lot
think
of
she needs
that.
to have a
Sorry, you're still on a delay, but go ahead.
the only reason I think she needs to have a tough skin is I know how men on the internet treat women that are buff. It's gross and sometimes bad. And then you add in all the issues The Last of Us has. I think it's
Yeah,
going to reawaken some anger that people have at
It's going to reawaken a lot of bullshit reasons, that people were angry
Yeah.
at that game, and, the thing I was gonna say is that I think also a lot of that toxicity, and this is not excusing it, I'm just saying the a reason why I don't think it's going to be that bad, or I'm not gonna say don't think, it may not reach that bad, is a lot of that toxicity came hand in hand with the leaks of the game.
Yeah.
So,
Boy,
that's something
dude.
that you c now me and a friend though, I was having a conversation with this friend that I do want your guys' input on, which is, do you think a lot of those, we don't even have to talk about like the issues and toxicity that came from the reaction to part two. Do you think that just the big story beats of part two, and again, we are in full spoilers for everything, so like I'll just straight up say it. Things like Joel's death and switching to Abby's perspective and seeing just how violent Ellie gets during part two, if that's going to have the same reaction, my friend thinks that it does because he thinks that nobody's going to know. Whereas I think I'm also not going to be surprised if, oh, Joel dies in the second part becomes like, the example I used is when Half Blood Prince, the book, came out and Snape kills Dumbledore was like the biggest spoiler of that era versus
Mhm.
Half Blood Prince, the movie. By that point, everybody knew Snape killed Dumbledore. It was not a big thing going into that movie. I wonder if we're going to have a similar thing here where this becomes the water cooler show. Somebody at an office talks to people like us who are gamers and have played these games, and somebody already gives up the information of like, oh yeah, well, in the second game, Joel dies.
I'm
And then
gonna
that just
say
starts to
no.
spread. Like,
I'm gonna say no
I'm
yeah.
gonna
for a
say
similar reason
I'm
as
gonna
to
say
why Brett just said no. Where HBO has a very weird, like Game of Thrones should have been spoiled for a lot of people because they do follow the books pretty quickly. Book fans thought it was fun to watch people watching the HBO show discover these things. It was like a thing. And like you read the
Gotcha.
books to try to catch up because like it became a big joke about people who had read the books being like waiting for like the red wedding being the big one to happen because that happens in
or
the third book. We
yeah,
all knew it was
you took the
coming.
words you took the
The
words right out of
Yeah.
my mouth because uh I think I think people want to see the reactions of people who don't know the source material. I think uh just with like the twist that you brought up, Jordan, like I mean that happened with Game of Thrones in season 1, right? Like, spoilers for Game of Thrones season 1, 12 years old, like when Ned Stark gets killed, that was like massive because he's the
Game
main character
changing.
of season 1. He's the main character of season 1, and I'll never forget watching that because I hadn't read the books and just getting rocked. And so that's going to happen to everyone watching this show in season 1 with what happens, and definitely with season 2. And I think that it's HBO, so the audience is a little bit different, and I think they're going to really love it.
But do
It's
you think
also
that the
just
Game of Thrones?
there's a love for the Last of Us game as a piece of art in a way that there is a love for the Game of Thrones books as a piece of art. And so I think you fall into the same thing where you have the people that have experienced this art before in its first form being the video game and them knowing what it was like to go through The Last of Us Part 2 without spoilers, there's a very weird like camaraderie thing where it's like people don't want like look at Chance with this. Like I don't really care about spoilers, so I'm here. But like the whole thing has been like since I don't really remember how the game ends and I know nothing about part two besides like those big beats. Um like people have been very trying very hard not to spoil it. And I don't want things getting spoiled for my parents. Like I've been hiding like, and telling them not to Google things because I don't want them to find out that Joel dies before it happens in the show, like, because watching them get to experience it for the first time is so much fun, like, they love the show and it's great.
Yeah. I think the big tell as to what is going to decide that is really going to be in the marketing, because the marketing for part two, there is a straight up cutscene that they showed in the first advertisement that is in the game with a different person because they didn't want to tell you that Joel was dead. The marketing for part two made you think that it was Dina who died
But
and
that's
Ellie was
working
going
under
after the.
But that's working under the assumption that they're covering the whole game in I don't even think worrying about how they're gonna advertise before and after Joel's death, because I don't think we're getting it in season 2. I think if we get it in season 2, it will be the cliffhanger of the last episode, will be her saying, "Joel, get up." Like, I truly think
Gotcha.
the episode 10 of season 2 will be Joel, get up, and it will cut to black, and that will be it. Um,
See, the reason why
so that they
that's
don't
wild to
have
me
to
is
market,
because
because then all of their marketing's done
I
already.
I think what they'll do is take a page out of HBO Game of Thrones book, and they'll do it episode 9. They'll do it
Yeah.
the penultimate episode. They won't do it at the end. They'll do it right before, and then
yeah.
you get a
It'll
little bit of
be
the
you'll get the
aftermath.
beginning of the
Yeah.
the fallout like they did with
Well, we
yeah,
will
I
just.
always forget that he didn't what?
Oh, go ahead.
They did the same thing in Game of Thrones they would do, and they did the same thing with I think the only one that they absolutely cut to black, and that was the end of the season, unless I'm misremembering, was Jon Snow. I think that was the only one where, like, he took
Oh
a
yeah.
knife to the gut, and we were just left like that for years, for, like, a year.
Because
Um,
that's like the latest story thing for him in the books. Like we still haven't gotten past that point.
yeah.
So, but that's like
Yeah, that was
that's for our
truly
Game of
the
Thrones
wildest moment.
podcast. We'll
Truly the
talk about that
wildest
for
moment.
Game of Thrones.
Because Jordan, everybody would go to the book people and John got stabbed and everybody was like, "Hey, what happens?" And they were like, "We don't fucking know either, guys. Like we're still waiting on the
Yeah.
answer." Like
Good.
and that book's still
But I
not
guess.
out.
Oh, God. I guess everybody who's watching The Last of Us is going to just have to wait and see what happens with season 2, how they divide it up, what the marketing is like, and what things change and what stay the same. But one thing that will stay the same is that after every episode, you can find us here on youtube.com/shared screens, reviewing, discussing, talking about episodes of The Last of Us, as well as a bunch of other stuff. We had a Forspoken review go up. We have a brand new Shared Screens podcast every Saturday. So once again, remember to like, comment, subscribe so we can see you guys next time. Bye.